Hey real estate nerds, this is Alex Yoder with Pro Tip Tuesday, my favorite day of the week. And today I want to talk to you about a piece of legislation that is currently being proposed by the legislators at the state level here in Colorado, which is referred to or called cause evictions or just cause evictions. If you are looking up the bill on the Colorado General Assembly website, you can go to you can search in the search box HB24-1098. HB24-1098. So imagine, let me give you a few examples of why this bill would be extremely detrimental to landlords here in Colorado. Imagine that you are, well, I'll give you an example. We had a tenant a couple of years ago. It was a gentleman who was growing marijuana in his townhome. And we had told him, you can't grow marijuana in your townhome, it's a lease violation. Also, it's going to be a real problem since you're in a townhome for the HOA with your neighbors being so close and the smell that's being produced by what you're doing, which is against your contract. And from that moment forward, even though the tenant removed the grow that he had in his townhome, from that moment forward, the tenant just thought we were evil. We were trying to keep him from his income because he was selling, I guess he was selling the plants or selling the marijuana, I don't know. But every interaction with him was him cussing out our staff members, just extremely aggressive and personally threatening me that he will never forget this, and basically suggesting that he's going to come after me because of me trying to enforce the lease on behalf of our client because he was growing marijuana in his townhome. And imagine in a situation like that where the lease is coming up at the end of, and in this case I think it was ending in June or July of that year, and we basically said, look, it's January, but clearly this is not going well. Let's just non-renew, or you can break lease and we won't charge a penalty. We had the client that we work with agree to that, so we can just kind of part ways. Let's just go our separate ways. And imagine in a situation where a bill like this passes, which would not allow us as landlords to non-renew a tenant when their lease is over, unless it falls under just a couple small categories. And those categories include but are not limited to if you're selling your house, if you're moving back in, if you're performing major renovations. But it doesn't allow for these various nuanced, conflicting, awful tenancy relationships where it's just like, look, when your lease is over, please plan on vacating the property, find somewhere else to live. And for you mom and pop landlords, the notion that you be stuck renewing somebody with no choice unless it fell under those specific categories, or unless there was like a blatant breach of the lease that the tenant wasn't willing to cure, is pretty terrifying to me as a landlord and as a property manager. I have another example. We have an owner that we met with some years ago. He's become a good friend, and when I initially met with him to manage his house, we were sitting at his dining room table to talk about maybe taking over the management of his home, and he was sobbing. He was sobbing at the table because he and his tenant kept on getting into it. The tenant kept on promising things and failing to do what they promised, to include various repairs that they're going to fix things that they had damaged, and the relationship was just very, very negative. Both the tenant and the landlord were at each other's throats. It was just a bad situation, and this landlord, being very new to it, kind of made every mistake in the book. Good guy, but he just doesn't do it full time, so he doesn't know exactly how to position things for his success. And in taking that property over, we were able to, over time and through quite a bit of pain, kind of fix that situation. And one of the instruments of fixing that situation was, hey tenant, you know what, this is just not working. It's a very angry, contentious relationship, and it'd really be best when your lease ends, I think it was in October, like when your lease ends in 7 or 8 months, that you plan on just finding somewhere else to live. And being able to do a non-renewal of that lease was paramount to getting this situation into a much better place. And I'll be clear that this bill is titled just cause evictions or for cause evictions, but really it's not eviction in the traditional sense that we would all recognize it. It's not saying you have to have just cause to evict somebody. Of course you have to have just cause to evict somebody. If you're removing somebody in the middle of their contract, you're forcibly removing somebody in the middle of their agreement. But this bill is about non-renewing somebody when their lease is over. When their lease is over. And the restrictions that it creates are very problematic and would really be detrimental if this bill ends up passing. So I would encourage you, for those of you who want to be involved and who want to help us push back in the state of Colorado at the state level against these things, please join the CLLC, the Colorado Landlord Legislative Coalition. Go to coloradolandlordlegislativecoalition.org. That is a good resource and a good way to be involved, because by being a member, you will get notified when we are doing what calls to action, aka letters that need to go out to legislators who are voting on these bills so we can inform them about the implications. But also we can, in some cases, in I guess particularly going into this session, we'll have probably points of testimony where we need to show up in force to testify against these bills and show the legislators that the public at large doesn't like this and that it'll hurt everybody, landlord and tenant alike. Because imagine if I'm basically stuck renewing somebody unless they fall into those categories, how much more terrified I'm going to be to put somebody into my house, and what the restrictions will be, and how particular I'm going to be on choosing somebody, because now I'm in some ways kind of stuck with them. You know, those implications I don't think are good for anybody. And if you are a member of the CLC, or even if you are a member of my Colorado Springs Landlord Forum Facebook page, I'll try to update and notify you guys as we are needing to mobilize to write letters or to show up for testimony at the state capitol. And keep in mind, if you do want to sign up for testimony, you can do that remotely. You don't have to do that face to face if you're not like in the Denver area and it's not convenient for your life to do that. So anyway, stay plugged in, and thank you so much for those of you who are involved and for your support. Let's push back on House Bill 24-1098. We'll see you next week.